Hey everybody, welcome to the Founder Hour podcast. I'm your co-host Posh, and we've got Pat right there. And today we're joined by Ben Goodwin, the founder of OLIPOP, which is, in my opinion, and probably Ben's opinion, a better alternative to soda. I'm a huge fan myself.
We're drinking the tropical punch right now. Is the newest flavor, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that just went live on our website today. Actually,
Okay, so people will be able to buy that soon. Or will be able to buy that.
Currently.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of the root beer because I've grown up loving root beer, Dr. Pepper, all that stuff. So I drink it probably on a weekly basis. Like, I buy it at Whole Foods. We don't get sponsored by Whole Foods, but whatever.
We're like the polar opposite. This is my first time trying it.
And
it is incredible. Yeah, I got to give it that. So.
It's funny because we get a lot of people that they try to be on the podcast and they'll send us their drinks.
Yeah.
Or sauces and this and that, whatever. And like at one point, like I think we just have to throw shit out because some of the stuff's not good.
Right. It's been my experience.
Yeah. So in this case, luckily, we love the company, and we're like, I'll take more soda like all day. But Ben, anyways, thank you for being on the show with us.
Thanks so much for having me, Posh and Pat. Yeah, it's cool to be here.
So we can start off with a question that we both love, and we've asked probably 200 plus founders that we've had on the show, is to kind of run us through your childhood a little bit. You don't have to give a 20-minute response because we can, I'm sure, converse in between. But give us kind of what life was like for young Ben.
Youngling. Yeah, sure. It isn't all roses in my particular case. Though I've had some interesting pivots along the way. I was born in San Francisco. I'm 36. I was born in 1985, and kind of downhill from there.
I mean, San Francisco's pretty hilly, right? So.
Yeah, that's what I meant. No, I mean, my childhood was tough. There isn't really a way to sugarcoat it. My father died from a surgery complication when I was a year and a half old. That wasn't that great for my mom. She ended up in a relationship with an abusive drug addict, which meant that I got to grow up around that. That was terrible. We also grew up in a lot of poverty. It's ironic because I lived in Pacific Grove and Monterey, which are very like high-end areas, but we had to move like 13 times because we kept getting evicted. So that wasn't great. And as a byproduct of that, like obviously there's trauma associated with that. There's all kinds of stress and anxiety, but we also ate really shitty food. So grew up, with that whole cluster. And then I don't know, so like 12-ish or something. I don't know why my mom started letting this happen, but I would just like, it was emotional eating on my end, but I would like go to the store and buy a fucking, bag of circus cookies. What are those animal?
Yeah.
Just like eat one of those in a day.
The pink and white ones with the sprinkles on top. Yeah.
So they're delicious. Let's be honest. But they're not. It's not great for anybody, especially that age. So that all happened, and luckily now I've been in and out of therapy for 20 years and or a little less than 20 years, and tried to be pretty psychologically oriented. And I'd say going through that, you have to learn a ton about yourself in order to be high functioning. And so I've leaned into that, and it's been an amazing growth experience, but it's also, you never quite lose all the demons or something like that.
It runs deep. Yeah. And like, I guess did you have any like outlets or things that you turned to as a kid just to kind of get out of that space?
So I liked reading. I liked reading a lot. It was funny because I was actually like, for a good part of my childhood, I was pretty kind of, described it the other day on a podcast as socially central. And the guy was like, I don't even know what that means. But, basically it was like quasi-popular in like early elementary school.
Right.
And actually I had these like clubs. So I had this thing called the X-Men Club. Okay. Like early budding entrepreneurialism. Like basically, I was like, all right, kids, like let's all collect 50 cents off of our lunch money. We'll pool it up. We'll buy X-Men toys. It'll be great. Like that was my first thing. Actually, this kid told on me for having a club, and the principal came in. He pulled me out of class and was like, Ben, we don't have clubs because clubs turn into gangs. And I was just like, shut up. If I could have said, if I had the language of shut the fuck up, that's what I used that one time. I just didn't happen to. But the big turning point for me was actually at 14. I had this really interesting shift. So
early high school days.
Yeah, like freshman, and it, like things were I wouldn't say they were cooling off, but things had taken like a turn. So I was getting messed with less, and that was great. And so I did a couple years of just stupid shit. And then it was actually this crazy. It was like, I still remember the day. I was actually eating a bowl of peanut butter, as you do. And I don't know. My sister came in and was like, why are you fucking eating a bowl of peanut butter? And I was just like, yeah, it's a good question. I don't know. Somehow that just sticks in my head. But that night I was just like, you know what? This is stupid. This whole thing I'm doing is stupid. It's like, it is not going to lead to a good life. I had also become like pretty existential with all of my anxiety. I was like, what's the point of life? What happens after you die? We were raised with like no spiritual or religious tradition. So for me, even at like in my teenage years, just even being confronted with those concepts was pretty revelatory or kind of unsettling for me.
Was that natural, or did you like read it somewhere or come across it somewhere where you started thinking about those things?
You know, that's weird because like, I don't know. I had this like, I was always a little drawn towards it, especially I think like Eastern philosophies. Again, not from anything in my home life. I remember being like whatever the hell age, and I was reading like a National Geographic, and there was like some cutout of like Shiva is the Hindu god.
Yeah.
And I like cut it out and I put it over my bed, and I hung like red tassels from it. And I'm like, I don't know who the fuck this. I didn't even know who that person was. You know, it was really weird. So I don't know. It maybe a lot of those mythos have like really deep kind of psychological drivers. I think resonate quite naturally with people. Potentially as a part of that, but it came in through a variety of different conduits. Probably mostly reading and that type of exposure. But the whole cumulative kind of thing all resulted in just this flip I literally had one day. Woke up the next day, was like, I'm changing all of this. Lost 60 pounds in 5 months.
Wow.
Started focusing.
Just better eating?
At that point, severe caloric restriction, which I don't necessarily recommend now, but that's what I did then. And then lots of exercise. And then he would go on these like long walks and just psychoanalyzed myself and was like, okay, this is happening because of this. And here's the lineage of this. And I see this behavior in myself and see this in the people around me. And just like basically broke down my life and all of my patterns. It was like, this is what I'm going to do now instead. And I cut like 80% of my friends.
Right.
I just shifted.
And this is at 14.
It's at 14, yeah.
Did you have any like people in your like maybe extended family or mentors at school or anyone that was maybe
I
like you could like
wish.
turn to that
I
like
wish.
actually cared about you and wanting to help you, or no?
I'm sure there was some teachers or some, you know, every once in a while, but not really, which is the kind of weird. I mean, I think like some people maybe, you know, kids can kind of tell that something's off with that kid, right? Like one period of my childhood, I'm like doing great, you know, popular, looked to by the other kids in certain kind of ways. And then, you know, stuff just starts to go off track. And all the kids can just kind of tell. There's like some off with that kid. So the kids weren't very helpful. Some of the teachers maybe a little more helpful. Other teachers, not at all. I mean, I remember I had this English teacher who would be like, because I was in this gifted program when I was younger, and then I was getting like D's, and it didn't make sense.
Right.
And she would like read off at the class like everybody's grades on their last test, and it was just like so fucking embarrassing. The whole thing was just so stupid. You know, it's like, but like this again, that's what trauma and like overwhelming negative emotion will do to anybody. But no, I wouldn't say like I really had a lot in the way of concrete support.
Yeah, because I mean, I'm sure there's like a lot of people out there that feel like they're like alone and lonely.
Yeah.
But it's like having, I don't know what it is, and maybe you can explain more about like what does it take to sort of not get too deep into that, because obviously dangerous things could happen, whether it's drugs or suicide or whatever it might be, right?
That's the norm.
Yeah,
that's the normal outcome.
Unfortunately, right? And so is there anything that you can think about that maybe you sort of like, my question was going to be like, did you lean on anyone? But if there's nobody, what did you lean on? Was it just kind of yourself and, you know, that like an intrinsic motivation to do well in life? Like,
it's interesting that you bring up intrinsic motivation, because I've been thinking about around some of our hiring and personnel decisions and even third-party decisions, like intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. Like if you're hiring people into your business and you can't track what their intrinsic motivation is and its alignment, like you can tell it's off. But you asked a good question, so I'm going to try to get you a halfway decent answer. You know, I mean, one thing that does pop into so I think one thing, this is not the most exciting thing. I think one thing that did help is the guy that was the primary driver of my abuse wasn't actually my father.
Yeah.
Right. I really think that like if I had to look at him and like see my genetics, I think that would have really fucked me up.
For sure.
You know, I think the other thing is, despite the fact that we moved a lot when I was a kid, like still lived in a reasonably nice area, so I could go outside and I could see, you know, the trees, and I could walk down to the beach and stuff like that. So, you know, I would say that like I took a lot of solace in my imagination. I took a lot of solace in nature. I took a lot of solace in things I was interested in. The other thing, and we could go down a deep rabbit hole on this, so I'll try not to, but there's a type of psychometric testing called a Hogan test, which is awesome. I got certified 2 years ago. It's like, you know, most psychometric testing is pretty bullshit, but I'm a big advocate for Hogan. But I have an executive coach who read my score, my report, and it's like 100 data points. It's much deeper than a lot of them. She's like, I read over 1,500 of these reports, and you have the single most defiant personality profile that I've ever seen. And she only deals with like founders and CEOs. Like,
What exactly does it measure? Like, what are some examples of the data points?
Oh my! So there's like meta points. There's meta points and sub points. It's broken into 3 basic buckets. One is your HPI, which is your day-to-day strengths, how you show up under normal conditions. The next one is your HDS, so it's your derailers. Is how it's kind of quantified. It's like if you're not paying attention to yourself, or if you're really stressed and you're triggered and you're derailing, this is how it's likely to express itself. It's a little bit of a misnomer because those are actually strengths. They're just strengths that arise in relationship to stress. And if you can manage them, they stay strengths. And if you can't, then they become maladaptive. And then there's your MVPI, which is kind of your drivers and motivations. And so there's like 8 to 14 kind of meta scores. And then each one of those meta scores has like 5 to 7 sub scores. So this is like a lot of data.
Right.
Yeah.
How do you think that learning about you being defined through that test defined you, or not even defined you, but like, did it have any sort of effect on you?
Well, I wasn't surprised. I wasn't surprised.
And that was recent, right? That was not too long ago, or
That I got the test.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was probably 3 years old at this point. But you shouldn't need to test more than every 5 to 10 years. I would, and if you ask my sister, it wouldn't surprise her either. So it was such a pain in her ass growing up, in certain ways. But yeah, I don't like. I saw it and I was like, this all makes sense. I mean, this is one of the things, like getting into therapy pretty early. I mean, I started therapy at like 17, and I've been in and out of it. Like, I found certain things more effective inside of it, and certain things less effective. But I truly do believe, and I'm like the case study for this, that having a lot of shit to deal with, including serious trauma, if you do the actual work, which is excruciating and grueling and seemingly endless, like if you do that actual work to get to know yourself, to get to work with your parts, your internal drivers, I think that the people who have dealt with real shit and then deal with the real shit have capacities that could be very difficult for other people to kind of come by. So
like what?
I mean, I see it. Well, so I see this all the time. For example, like we'll get people who will apply who will like have an MBA, and you know, we've got a couple of those in the business, and no disrespect to MBAs, but I've seen people come out of fucking MBA programs don't have a clue what they're doing. You know, like I'm looking for
like
people,
in terms of skills.
Well, more like everything at the end of the day boils down to emotions.
Yeah,
everything. That's why like working with emotional intelligence, phenomenal book. And you know they have all these studies in the book, and they try to track like outcomes based on high EQ versus low EQ. Like at senior leadership positions, your success rate is like 80 to 90% determined by your EQ. A high EQ senior leader produces, and again, you'll have to read the book to get the studies, but produces like 127x the kind of financial outcomes and high impact outcomes. So at the end of the day, everything's being driven by emotion. And so what I look for is things like grit and courage and mental flex, like mental agility. And like, these are the things that actually make you successful. It's not that you don't have to know anything,
but those are easily like teachable.
Yeah. You give me somebody with
if you're able to be like mentally agile, for example, I could teach you how to do certain things.
1,000,000,000%. Yeah. And you're also going to be higher impact by your nature, because you're going to be looking at what's the real dynamics of the situation. What's the real problem? How do I attack it? And then how do I have the social skills to bring people with me and build trust? Like that's the difference between success and failure. So I'm also a college dropout. It's like later in the story, but then also.
So you finished high school though. So
I finished high school. Yeah,
you finished high school.
Yeah.
things were getting a little better.
Well, yeah, I mean, eventually I just got out of the house, which is super useful.
Right.
But the other thing that I did is like, I super focused on nutrition as a part of that. And like the deeper and deeper I went into nutrition, that's actually what set me up for my life trajectory. Because when you grow up eating standard American diet, aka SAD, and you're not...
Did not know that's what it's called, but yeah,
That
it
is what
makes
it's
sense.
called.
Yeah. We're Middle Eastern, so it's completely opposite. It's like med. It's like medicine.
I'll take it any day. One of my favorite restaurants in the world is actually Shalom Yal out of Portland. It's
never been.
God. Oh my god, the hummus, jeez. Okay, anyway.
Wait, so you mentioned like having like a severe caloric deficit, right? Like when did that cause any?
That was just for a period of time.
Okay,
yeah.
so you kind of got yourself on track in terms of eating healthy and like doing it in a healthy way.
Yeah. Well, so basically, it's about converting over to nutrient dense foods and getting all the shit out of your diet. And if you've been living for many years on a nutrient deficient, like toxic diet, and then you switch, and then you do a handful of things to support yourself, and one of them is switching to a nutrient dense, healthy diet. The implications would be pretty profound. Like all I was expecting was, I'll have some more energy and I'll keep the weight off. But what I've personally found is that after a couple of years of doing this, like the transition, and I could track it as I was getting deeper into the nutrition, was affecting kind of my emotional stability and my cognitive capabilities. And that's where I got really interested. I was like, what the hell is this relationship? And like, also it's pretty paradigm shifting to go from one of those to the other. And that ultimately is the experience that I would like to create for as many people as I can.
In terms of emotions, like how did you find yourself being different? Like, were you like generally happier, more motivated, more like energetic? Like what were the immediate sort of results?
I felt more just emotionally stable. I am pretty neurotic. Like I do have a tendency to feel a decent amount of negative emotion. I'm passionate, so I tend to be a little more volatile. But even just like being able to name and know that, and then have like systems for utilizing.
You're self-aware.
For me, if I'm not self-aware, I'm basically a nightmare, right? It would like never work out for myself or anybody else.
And I'm assuming that's something that's been like a work in progress over time with therapy and all these things to become more self-aware.
Today, every day, every day is a process to become more self-aware. You can't ever. So this again is kind of what I was getting back to with people who've actually worked through some shit, like. Yeah. Because it's kind of it's a false ultimatum anyway. Like the idea that you could not work on yourself, the idea that you cannot stop growing, like that's kind of a false choice. Right. So those of us who have like seen the abyss, I guess, a little bit and being like, oh shit, this is what's gonna swallow me if I don't, like, then it just becomes like pretty obvious, like it's a false choice to not do it. Plus it also is the upside of making life itself a lot more interesting. If I'm not interested in life, like I can't even keep myself engaged enough to manage myself. So this is part of why I do insane things like create beverage companies. Because I do just want to, for the record, for posterity's sake, I want to mention I am a co-founder. My other co-founder is David Lester, who I've been working for 10 years.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll definitely talk about how that all came about. But I guess you mentioned being a college dropout. Whatever. So you ended up going to college.
Yeah.
How long were you there? Yeah.
So I went through the Monterey Peninsula College, community college, finished that. So I think I have an AA. I'm not even totally sure. And then I switched over to UC Santa Cruz. I was going for environmental
slugs.
I was going for, like an infinitesimal period of time. I think I had made the decision to drop out actually. I went to this fucking like thing where you're supposed to sign up for there's some sort of orientation. I don't know what it was, but yeah, they're basically like, if you want to sign up for classes at the orientation, bring $400, and if you don't bring it, then you have to wait like 2 weeks. And I was like, is this how the fuck this is gonna be? Every time there's an opportunity to give you some cash, you're gonna let me like get a leg up, and if I don't want to be your cash machine. And then I also, at the same time, I was throwing raves and warehouse parties, because that's another thing you do. I also had a farmer's market booth selling coconuts and all sorts of other shit. It was like a lot of things going on. But I actually met this dude at one of the raves that I threw, where I saw him, and then I recognized him later. Basically, dude is a civil rights activist. He's now deceased, but won a Supreme Court case by himself with no legal representation in 1983. Colander versus Lawson. He's the reason why it's illegal for police to ask you for ID without probable cause. So he was like at one of my shows randomly because he was taking over the Golden State Theater in Monterey, which is like this 1,500 person vaudeville theater. And I see him in Whole Foods. I'm like, thanks for coming to my show. And he just like blows my face back with too much verbal fluency. But the net of it is like he wants me to come down and interview because he liked my show. And I do that. And then it turns into like, okay, I'm the co-executive producer. But the only thing that was really interesting was this guy kind of being my mentor. But like, I saw his example of like, here's a guy who didn't have a law degree, didn't have a lawyer, went to the Berkeley Law Library, read the law, took it all the way to Supreme Court, and then won his case. And I found that just, I am a person, like this is one of the things about, I don't fit inside of any kind of like nice little boxes. So this it was very inspiring to me, this idea that I could kind of really carve my own path. And I really like the idea that things are modular and like flexible, and you can kind of build things in interesting ways.
Sorry, I might have missed this part. What were you going to be working on with him?
Okay, so he was taking over a theater.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. That's right.
And so he invited me down to interview to be the co-executive producer because he saw my show, was like, this is like...
Got it. And so the idea was to throw shows at this theater like similar to yours, or was it... What was
No, we did like Bob Dylan and the Beach Boys and B.B. King and Lily Tomlin and Willie Nelson. It was stuff like that.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
Those are pretty big names.
Live event venue.
Yeah. It was a 1,500 person theater.
Yeah. So that's why you dropped out to go work.
No, so I was doing all of that
simultaneously.
All of those. Yeah, that's doing too many things has always been a byproduct of my life. But no, I was doing all that stuff at the same time. So I was going to school, or I think I was like prepping to go to school when that started. But I was throwing my own shows and farmers market, and then also working various jobs.
Yeah. And did you have any idea what you would do like after college, or like at the time when you were still in college? Like, did you have like a plan or something in place, or you were just like, did you find anything interesting? Like, what did you even study? What was the...
Well, so I was going to school for environmental science.
Okay.
This would have been kryptonite to me in retrospect. I kind of was like, maybe I'll go into environmental law or environmental science. I like science. I think I'd be halfway decent at law. I like the environment. It's always been these like, even getting into beverage was kind of stupid. It was just like, beverages are cool. Like it did not start out as a particularly sophisticated thought process. It was just like, and I had some idea of it. And so what I actually dropped out of college to do was, I actually dropped out of college with no specific plan.
Got it.
I just was like, I don't want to be these people's cash machine. I think I can do something interesting on my own. Also, again, overly simple thought, but like what really motivated me was learning how to think, not what to think.
Yeah.
So I'm like, we live in the information age. So if you've got a hungry mind and a good BS filter, you can get a lot of really good information. And so for me, it was just like, I want to keep myself hungry and learning and going. And kind of the way to do that is just to fucking throw away the safety net of the piece of paper and just earn whatever I earn out of life.
Did you have like a savings account or anything to just keep you going, or
no? Not at all.
So
bro, I only had health insurance through a business like 3 years ago.
So I mean, like, did you feel like you had not much to lose, like at that point in your life?
So I never really thought of it as like a lot to lose or not a lot to lose. I always tried to think about it like, am I making a fear-based decision? Am I making a strong decision? Am I doing something because I actually want to be doing it? And I was like, if I'm going to stay in college with how I currently feel about it, I'm going to be making a fear-based decision, and I would rather try my hand at doing something more interesting.
I like that you bring that up because it kind of ties in with like trusting your gut. And like, I feel like it also ties into that, like as human beings, I feel like we think we have a good grip on what the future is going to look like, but nobody actually knows. And all you know is what you know at the moment. And if you feel like something is the right thing to do, whether or not, like, you're trying to map out what your decision is going to lead to in the future.
Yeah.
But the truth is, like, you just don't know. And so sometimes you just have to kind of like just throw yourself off the edge and hopefully figure out, what's next.
Yeah. And you learn, you kind of get to figure out what you're made out of, which is actually kind of like, not to get into this territory, but it's kind of the masculine archetype here. Like, figure out what the fuck I'm made out of through struggle is kind of a thing. And so I like that a bit. I like the idea of like getting out and being like, all right, let's like see what I can do. But I'd say like, again, it gets back to that, like I have to be interested in life kind of thing. Like I can't get a piece of paper and go do a job and get a paycheck and all the fucking shit that is so standard. I'm not wired for it.
Yeah. Ben, at this point, did you have a relationship with your mom or no?
I did. Yeah, I did. Actually, I mean, I moved in with her. That's a whole story of how the two of them finally separated. But then after that happened, I moved in with her. For a couple
And that was during the college years, or?
Yeah, that was like, no, that was just like,
pre-college?
that was pre-college. That was like 17 to 19. And then at 19, 20, I moved up to Santa Cruz.
Did you have any like part of you that wanted to prove something to somebody or no?
That's never been I definitely can hold grudges. I definitely can, but that's never been a huge thing for me. I really like, again, I think it's just like doing something that I just think like meaning is the thing that generates the most satisfaction. It's also like when you're more existentially motivated, it's basically what you're seeking. So just like doing something meaningful to me and learning more about myself and like testing the world, I think was more drivers for me.
How did you like assess whether something was meaningful or not? Was it the impact it was having on other people, or was it the impact it was having on you, or both? Or
that's a great question. I think at the end of the day, I would say it was more how I felt it, because I do actually feel like I had to, how it could serve the common good.
Yeah,
I do feel like I had to kind of bifurcate at some point, because I was very interested in music and like I through great shows. I've been DJing for like 20 years. I have a music studio. I was producing music. I released an album in my early 20s. So, and who knows if I would have been successful doing that, but that actually did hold a lot of weight for me. And at the end of the day, the reason why I went in this direction was because I was like, okay, probably can positively impact more other people if this feels less selfish to pursue this path.
Did you feel as though you were a good marketer? Like when you were doing even those like music events, I mean, having 1,500 people there, it's not like automatic. Like
totally. Yeah.
So I'm just curious, and like how that obviously ties into now, but was that something that you were skilled at, like getting out the word and talking to people and hustling? I mean, I just want to know kind of like what went into that.
Yeah. I mean, I have a very strong, consistent. So the one thing, and this doesn't work well for me in my relationships, but it works really well for me in my quote professional life, is I am very critical and I am a quality snob. I fucking love quality like above everything. So I actually find a lot of marketing pretty annoying. And I think actually probably most people do. Because for me, like if the thing is quality, like yes, you want to be able to communicate so people understand that quality is there. But the idea that you're marketing without having some quality. So yes, I can hustle. Yes, I can like typically, even though I'm not actually particularly, I'm reasonably loquacious with my words. So I'm not sometimes always perfect at cramming them down, but I can quasi efficiently like encapsulate something. Like, so I think like I had enough of those skills, but what's always driven me a lot more is like, I actually really care about doing something that's quality because that it brings me so much satisfaction.
Do you think having high quality is like, reduces the need for marketing in general?
It should. I think it should. I mean, I think the challenge is, and we, without being too inflammatory, we're running into this now. The challenge is that, it's a crowded marketplace for most marketplaces, right? So you can put out a really high quality product. If you aren't able to communicate around that or kind of generate that emotional connection, then other products that have put a lot less time into the quality of the product can say whatever.
Right.
So that's, yeah.
I feel like when you reach a point of scale where you have to go from like, I agree with you. Like if your product is good, I'm going to tell my friends, hey, check this out. They're going to be like, oh, they're going to have it at their parties.
Yeah.
And then you're going to see it. And then naturally other people are kind of evangelizing your product.
Totally. Yeah.
But then you get to the point that you're like, fuck, this nasty product out here is like spending millions on marketing. And they're taking my customers for sure. Cause I don't know, it's a hot thing to do. So how do you get, I mean, I guess we could talk about that later when we talk about OLIPOP, but I feel like that is when marketing, matters.
Yeah, 1,000,000%. Right. And I think that, but even like it being quote worth it to pull that lever if you don't have the thing underneath. Like, so for me, it's like the way that I can get myself motivated around the marketing is like, we have to defend the thing that's actually got like value, the thing that's actually been well thought through, and the reasons why we're doing this. Because it becomes like, one, it's about the product quality, but the other thing it is about the mission and the vision. Like there's a lot of layers to what we're trying to do at OLIPOP that aren't immediately apparent. And it's important to me that those things land and get anchored, because if they do get anchored in the industry, they'll be shifting for portions of the industry. So those are the kind of things that go along with the high quality product where I'm like, this is worth fighting for. And so go for it.
So let's talk about when you joined or became a part of this beverage industry and how that even came to be.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and I might have skipped several years here, but you drop out of college. What do you do? And then how do you get into the beverage industry?
Pretty quickly after doing that, I was like, okay, well, I actually read the Cliff Bar guys book, the White Roads. And so I was like, that was before I'd actually made the choice to drop out. And I was like, all right, let's do it. But so, I thought like a great conduit for what's impacted me is our products. I like products. I like really high quality things as discussed. So maybe I'll put together this kind of product. Maybe I'll do a beverage. And then a friend's boyfriend was starting a kombucha company. And he was like, yeah, I need some help. And I was like, cool. Like, I want to do something with like coconuts and holy basil and all this other weird shit. But like, I'll just join you and I'll start doing kombucha. So let's do it. And that's actually where I find out what the microbiome is. Yeah. And then the brain gut axis, and that became a whole thing, which is now why I moved in that direction. So actually that was really helpful to have started there.
What was that brand? Or has that brand become anything?
It was it got pretty big. I was there for about 2 years. It's called Kombucha Botanica. It isn't in circulation anymore. As you guys maybe recall, Lindsay Lohan had some issue with her kombucha, and it all got pulled from the shelf for like.
I don't remember that.
It was a thing. I don't know. It was like 10 years ago or something.
With that specific brand?
No,
or just kombucha in general.
Actually, it would have been like 15 years. Anyway, it's like it was a while ago. Basically, all kombucha got pulled from the shelf because
sounds like Lindsay Lohan was the problem.
Lindsay Lohan probably was the problem, but but it is true that the issue is it is a ferment, has yeast in it. So it can create alcohol, which is technically above the like 0.5%. You have to be below 0.5%.
Oh, she got a drunk driving.
She got it. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. Or not a drunk driving. She had like an ankle bracelet that measured blood alcohol or some fucking crazy. Who cares? But like the basic point is that like it got pulled off the shelf.
Fucking Lindsay Lohan,
for a year. And then Kombucha Botanica in particular, when they reformed, because I was gone at that point, but when they reformulated, the margins weren't there. And they had, we actually had kind of started the kombucha bar with Whole Foods, which is pretty cool. But then, once that started diversifying out to other brands, I think they just lost the. But
for you, I assume that was a good kind of entry into the space because you get to meet all these contacts. And I mean, what were you doing there?
I mean, I was basically brewing the kombucha. So I was on the product side and I was on the op side. It's like whatever. It's a hyper startup. It was this guy Adam and then me for a while. So, I would do some demos and I'd do some
ops shit. Director.
Yeah, exactly. Party of two.
Yeah.
And then more people ended up joining. But I worked mostly on that side.
How did you even learn how to do all that? I mean, was it just by like trial and error?
He has a very big mental agility.
Yeah, it's the mental agility. No, I really am bizarrely good at figuring shit out.
Yeah.
And it's helpful that Adam also knew how to do it. So you can learn a lot. You can just learn how to do it. But then I am the kind of person who I'll start learning and then I'll be like, hey, what else can I learn about this? And bloop, 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 bloop. And that's how, you have skills.
Because obviously it's a great skill, especially in this industry, because, you often hear, and we talk about the companies that probably need the marketing.
Yeah.
And they're probably the ones that are like outsourcing product development and like formulation, which, it's like at that point, what is the company even? Like you're just kind of reselling someone else's product.
100%.
So I'm just curious because, it didn't sound like growing up, you were like much of a tinker when it came to this. So you sort of fell into this.
Well, okay, this would be a good time to be self-aggrandizing to a slight extent. So I have had my brain scanned.
Yeah.
And I do have an objectively weird brain.
Okay.
If you guys want to hear about that, I mean,
why not?
Do you know anything about? Okay, so there's delta, theta, alpha, beta, gamma. Those are the brain. That's the spectrum of brain waves. Suffice to say that 99.9% of people do all of their kind of conscious processing in their beta spectrum. My brain does the majority of its processing in high alpha.
Okay.
So they don't know what that means. They just know that it's so bizarre that it can't really get compared against the DARPA database of brains.
It's a different process of thinking, is what it is. Or?
Yeah, I mean, so basically, like alpha is hypnagogic, moving into subconscious. and then theta subconscious, and then delta's like birth, death, coma. And we always have all of the brain waves going. It's just like, what are we actually using to process? So what I just think it means is that I use actually more of my subconscious to do more of my actual conscious processing, which is the weird part around it. But what it does allow me to do is it for whatever reason, it's like I'm horrible at like, oh, I need to talk to somebody, so let's set up a calendar invite and check all these different schedules and then reply to the thing in the email and click all the, but like you asked me to fill out a form and it's like torture for me. But it allows me to be like take large amounts of kind of non-linear data or like compare a lot of pieces of information that are disparate and then synthesize them. So I can do that pretty easily comparatively. It's just like basic
is that something
tasks.
is that something that and whether you know this about yourself or you were told based on those tests, but is that something that you're born with or did that happen over time?
That's a good question I don't have the answer to.
Yeah.
I suspect it's a lot of these things tend to be a combination. Like sociopaths are a good example. It's like or depression. Like it happens all the time. Like basically you're born with a certain genetic coding.
Right.
Then depending on what happens to you developmentally, it can express itself in a number of different ways. I bet so my guess is that I probably had some genetic predispositions and then went through all the stuff that I went through, and then that's just one of the ways my brain's adapted.
Yeah.
So you left your job here after 2 years or so. What do you do next?
Yeah. Then I basically just did a bunch of freelance product development. You know, I wanted to learn how to make a whole bunch of different things. And so that wasn't that long. That was just like 2 years, but basically different businesses. You know, the problem was I eventually got kind of dissatisfied with that because I was like, okay, I'm like making pretty good money for a dude who just dropped out of college and is making products, but I just felt like I was making these like esoteric. I mean, I live in California too, so it's like esoteric high-end products. People didn't need more esoteric high-end products.
Yeah.
So at a certain point, I just was like, I want to get back into beverage, and I want to do something that is actually at scale. You know, and that's what led me into Obi, which was my next big kind of beverage attack.
Mm-hmm. And how are you like even like imagining what you're going to be building? Like where were you looking for opportunities? Did it just come to you or?
So, I mean, this is another good example where like at that point I was kind of at another crossroads because I was either like, I either wanted to create some sort of AI platform that could analyze all the bills going through Congress and then break them down into like relevant information for everyday voters and then like pull out the parts that might be important for them and then actually create like a fourth branch of government. I don't know if I feel that way now after understanding some of there's been some cuts to education, which would make that concept a little difficult. But or I was like, or I want to do a product / beverage at scale. One way though is like I'm getting restless. I want to do something that has.
And you just enjoy the industry, I assume. Like, is that what it was?
I don't really enjoy the beverage industry that much.
Yeah. So why did you want to get back into it?
Well, like in general, I perceive. I'm not, if you can't tell, like a business guy. Like, you know, that's not really like my thing. The reason why I went into business was because it was like, well, it seems like we give a huge shit about money. And it seems like we give a ton of influential power to these corporations. So that seems like the perfect vehicle to make a positive change. Right. So that's the only reason I kind of got into business in the first place. In terms of like products, I think it was a little bit of and beverages specifically, I think it was just like, again, it wasn't like, it was somewhat hubristic thinking. It was like, well, beverages get big, which is the reason why a lot of people get into beverages because like, oh, I see them and they're cool and they get big. But I knew it was an opportunity to actually have scaled impact. I mean, if you look at the soda industry, for example, it's a $40 billion industry with 97% household penetration. And they've directly generated a country that has 37% of the country is diabetic or pre-diabetic. And those are conservative. And this is from the CDC, but those are commonly understood to be conservative numbers. So the impact can be really substantial, whether you're undermining people's health or whether you're supporting people's health.
Yeah.
Either way, though, was like, I want to do something at scale and ended up being like, okay, well, I have this like set of skills in this particular territory. So let's just like double back down to those.
Do you think not being like a business guy and having that business hat on when you were thinking about the business, and maybe I don't want to say it's like naivete, but like it could have been maybe from like a business standpoint.
Oh,
of
for sure.
Looking
Yeah.
at a very crowded, noisy industry and
Yeah.
being like, I can penetrate this with a new product. Like, is that a little bit of like a crazy like thinking? Like,
It is.
had that, yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's like I didn't find this out until later. But the stats are 2% of beverage businesses make it to $1 million in revenue. And then 2% of those make it to 10 million in revenue.
Million.
So yeah.
Million, that's it.
Yeah.
So it's like 0.004.
It's a very, very small
even
percentage
less,
of
yeah.
beverage companies
Yeah.
that make it past 10 million.
Yeah, because who's that? There's this investor on Shark Tank, Rohan, I believe.
Maybe.
Rohan something, I don't know. But he's in the beverage industry, and like every time there's like a beverage company that comes and pitches, they all just like never invest. They're just like, we're not doing it.
Right. Yeah, it's
Like,
hard.
Yeah, like we're just there's no point. We're never gonna get our money back.
It's capital intensive. To your point about the marketing, it's credit space. Again, I think you need to do something really interesting.
Right.
That's a good start. A lot of the beverage ideas are iterative or not even. They're just like no one asked for this and no one needs this.
So what was different about OB? What was it?
It's a great question. So Obi was basically the first. Okay, do you guys know what water kefir is?
Water kefir? No.
Water kefir? Do you know milk kefir?
Yes.
Okay, so
Like KEFIR.
Yeah. So
Got it.
water kefir is the non-dairy version of milk
Yeah.
kefir.
Like we have kefir cheese, which is like Lebni.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's a great culture. Like
Yeah.
from a the
It's very good for your digestive system. Right?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what my goal was to do was I was like, okay, kombucha's great, done that a little bit. Kombucha has 5 to 8 microorganisms present in it. Typically, it's acetic acid base, so it's nice and stable. It ferments in a very like stable, slow, predictable way. Typically, water kefir is a lot more interesting because it has like 19 different microorganisms in it, but it's a lot more unstable. So I thought it was like a very interesting challenge. Like if you could find a way to actually commercialize and scale this, like you'd have a really superior fermented drink. So
But how about taste wise?
well, it tastes good if it's done correctly, but it can go off more easily.
Right. Yeah.
And then it's got that.
Because I'm just imagining
lactic
like
acid
milk
stank to it.
kefir, and it's just like
Well, so yeah, that's
I don't know.
So there's a lot of there's lactose in milk.
Right.
Lactic acid is then part of the byproduct. So all the
Right.
kefirs produce a lot of lactic acid. Yeah, it smells like feet. So that was one of the things I wanted to kind of try to get past. It was
Right.
insane.
Yeah.
One of the things that my mentor did say to me that has always stuck with me is like, if it doesn't seem nearly impossible or impossible to start, it's probably not worth doing. So, that's like kind of been a thing. But yeah, I mean, the R&D process on that particular product was 4 years. And I hired a microbiologist and an organic chemist. I built, over the course of that four years, built 3 different like microbiome R&D labs.
Did you raise money for this?
No, at that time, no. I had 3 different income streams. And I used those to basically fund
consulting
this.
and stuff you were doing, or
Yeah, the product development. I was doing like SEO work for a while. I was doing some customer service. I was doing a ton of different things, just constantly working and living half time between the West Coast and the East Coast. That was chill.
yeah. So how many hours a week were you spending on the business? Like realistically?
Oh, I mean, like a decent amount because it was local. So, but there was a certain period where like, okay, I'm going to check in. We're going to do a couple hours in the lab. Then you'll have your marching orders. There was a lab assistant, so they would run a certain amount of the actual experiments with me not physically being there.
Yeah.
But then we'd have to keep reconverting. But yeah, I mean, I'm also working. I would be up until 2, 3 in the morning. Like when it was necessary, sitting at the lab bench. Because the other thing, as we starting to get closer to success with that product, is when I had this concept of like, while we're at it, let's make it a soda because let's actually disrupt that industry because that's not a big deal.
Yeah.
But then none of the non-nutritive sweeteners tasted good enough, so then I had to like make my own, and that was really. I mean, it wasn't. I had to blend very specific things together in an unusual way to get to the outcome I was looking for. But then,
and we can talk about this more like in a bit because I'm imagining something like this would need to be really popular at scale for you to make like a successful company and like turn a profit.
Yeah.
And so were you thinking that far ahead? Like how did you think that this would all turn out? Like were you going to make the best product you can make,
Yeah.
and then try to get into like as many stores as possible, or like what was or were you going to go like direct to businesses, like B2B? Like what was the idea?
No, I was definitely selling it to retailers.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I knew I was going to have to raise money at some point. And so while I was doing all this as well, I was also looking for a business partner. I was actually looking for it was the Goldilocks business partner for like 3 years. I was really, really picky, and I would go through these different rounds, and eventually ended on David, who was the right fit. But that for the 4-year R&D process was pretty much done by then. I mean, you had to have a product that actually like tasted good, and you knew you could scale, and you'd had genetically assayed. Like it was something real that I was able to bring to the table when we kind of met, so that he could be like, "Okay, we can move forward with this."
Did it go anywhere? Did Obi go anywhere?
Yeah, it did. It did. It was experiencing. We did get above the $1 million mark. It was experiencing like pretty good growth, like 200-300%. We did end up exiting. We exited a little earlier than we wanted to because of some partnership issues, but we also learned a ton through that process.
Yeah,
and and that was like late 2016. So that was a 7-year journey, front to back.
Got it.
And sitting there at the end of 2016 with some cash finally in my pocket, which is cool. But then, and I like flew to Japan for a couple weeks and was like, oh, I've always wanted to visit and like clear my head, and just because beverage industry is absolutely brutal. And chatting to David, I was like, do you want to do this again? Do you want to do something else? Like, what do you
And what was David's background?
So David is from northwest England.
Okay.
So grew up near Liverpool. He actually out of college went to work for Diageo, and he was there for about 10 years. So where David and I are really good complement.
And for those that don't know, Diageo owns like every single alcohol that you consume.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
There used to be Seagrams and Diageo.
Yeah.
I think fucking Diageo about Seagrams. But yeah, I mean,
what were you looking for in terms of qualities, and like how did you end up finding David and like connecting with him?
yeah, I mean, getting back to the EQ part of the conversation. It's sometimes, you find people with like the hyper impressive resume, which I went through, an iteration or two of that. But you need somebody in startup who's going to fucking put their head down and work. And that dude works. And I think the other thing that's great about David in compliment to me, first of all, like personality wise, we're very different. He's like zero neuroticism, hyper stable. The guy you talk to on Monday is the guy you talk to on Thursday. And he also brought some of the kind of professional polish that I was clearly and probably to this day still am lacking. And he had more of a marketing background. I mean, this what he basically did was like innovation launches and the marketing and kind of market segmentation at Diageo. There's like the perfect fit. Like I barely knew my way around a fucking 3-year model at that point. So
you just put out like a job listing or something for co-founder, or like what was the process?
That was one thing I did at one point or multiple points. It was a certain combination of like networking. I think by then, I had a couple people who just believed in me, who got this. All the fucking crazy shit I was doing, man. I also had like 3 co-ops at one point in the middle of all of this. It's just fucking ridiculous. But, so I had a handful of like actually somewhat successful people who believed in me and what I was doing. And I think had thrown like, I don't know, sub $50,000 in at that point. Anyway, one of them knew a woman who worked at Diageo who was actually David's boss. He went on a sabbatical because he just was like, I'm overselling fucking whiskey to people. He kind of had a similar thing. He's like, I'm tired of selling alcohol to people who don't need more alcohol. So he went on a sabbatical, came back. He's like, you know what? I'm not coming back to Diageo. And after a decade, like he was definitely on a track.
And David, I assume, was older than you.
He is.
Yeah.
How did you know?
Just the name.
That's the vibe. David Lester.
Yeah.
He is older than me by a couple of years.
Yeah. Well, you said 10 years of experience. You at the time.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I think he's 6. He's 6 years older than me.
Yeah. But still relatively like excited and fresh and ready to go in a startup environment.
Back then.
Yeah. Especially back then.
Yeah.
Sorry, and this is around what year?
Yeah. So I was, let's see.
2012.
Yeah, I think somewhere back there. I mean, I was 28, so it was 8 years ago. Yeah, so 2012, 2013. 2014, somewhere in that little,
Yeah,
somewhere in that nugget.
Not too long ago.
Not that long ago. Yeah. But I mean, the compliment has worked out really nicely just because there's the dynamic between us is pretty, it leads to some also differences in perspective, certainly differences in temperament. And again, like everything else, when we lean into them and work them out, the synergy that it provides is like very good for the
So
company.
did he move here or he was still in London?
He was living in Brazil.
Okay.
He then moved to San Francisco because he wanted to live in America, and his wife is actually American. So they moved to San Francisco, got married. He told his boss he wasn't coming back. She's like, all right, well, if you're not coming back, this thing just came across my desk, and it was one of my investors who knew this woman, his boss who worked at Diageo. And he's like, all right, fuck, let's give it a go. And like he and his wife had this whole perfect plan. She already got a job. He was going to get a job. It was going to be down the street. They were going to get their lunches together, and the whole thing was going to be cute and whatever. And then he goes and meets with me, and he comes back. He tells the story a lot. And he's like, yeah, I came back from that lunch, and my wife just took one look at my face, and she's like, you're going to work with this guy, aren't you? And he's like, yep, I think I am. And that was like, how it went from there.
So Obi exits, and you obviously decide that you're gonna start another company, another beverage company. How did you guys start thinking about what that was gonna be? And I think before the podcast we were recording, you mentioned that it was like years and years of development. What was the kind of the initial stage of OLIPOP, and how did the name come about? How did the concept come about?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, so one piece of it was basically just kind of looking at the stage at which we exited Obi and thinking like, did we take this thing as far as, because once you exit a business, it's like you can't control its destiny anymore. You don't know, and we have some plans. So we're like, did we accomplish those or not? Like, no, probably not. And then to be honest, the other thing that was really motivating to me is I have been watching a change in the microbiome kind of research over the last, and metabolic health research for that matter, over the last kind of decade. Because microbiome science is fascinating. It's a really emergent field. So they're kind of finding new stuff out about it all the time. Back when I started Obi and even in my kombucha days, the kind of idea was like, we'll have these probiotics and these probiotics will go in and do X, Y, and Z. But the problem is that like the consumer grade probiotics haven't really delivered for the most part on that initial promise, and like, and then at the same time, there's this whole interesting, slate of research around kind of hunter gatherers and indigenous diets. And they're like, well, their microbiomes are just like infinitely better than ours. Their metabolic disease is like non-existent. Like there's all these kind of, health related outcomes, and it's all happening through the diet. So what I tried to do was go in and look at all the literature and say, what are the big pieces in these indigenous diets that are missing from the industrialized diet? And I kind of broke down into fiber, prebiotics, which are typically fiber, but not always. And then in general, nutrient diversity, which is also one of the things that I experienced when I was going through my own kind of nutrition change up, was obviously drastically higher quantities of all three of those things. So like it made a ton of sense to me. And I was like, okay, so this is actually the way that the kind of science is shifting. Wait, what are the products that are out, like Metamucil? Like, what's out there that's like, it's not the sexiest product set, but it's a really useful thing. And I mean, in general, like, so indigenous hunter-gatherers in general get like 100 to 200 grams of fiber a day. And that's research out of Stanford. That's research out of UCSD. There's a lot of great, like, pieces of research that's been done to kind of validate that. The average American gets between 10 and 16 grams a day.
Jeez.
So just like and the FDA recommends 28 and the World Health Organization recommends 30 to 40. But the reality is like, we're not getting anywhere near the amount that we need to. And then I can spare you guys the gory details, but the issue is that deficit in our diet compounds generationally. So there's been like an almost 400% increase in food allergy complaints since the 1970s. When they look at the mucosal lining in our digestive tract versus hunter-gatherers, it's like 20% of the thickness. That's really important because that keeps inflammation low and keeps your system. There's many, many layers.
Can that be reversed?
That, I don't know how much how many biopsies they've done tracking that. There has been translational research though. So basically where they've taken people on an indigenous diet, they've given them an industrialized diet and vice versa. They've certainly seen health improvements, and they've seen improvements to microbiome diversity and also total quantity of beneficial microorganisms, both of which you definitely want.
So you wanted to start something, I assume, using that as your thesis. Let's
Yeah,
call it.
100%. Yeah.
But was OLIPOP the answer immediately?
It was. Yeah. Because I mean, I also, one of the things we learned is, I think I have this concept of like the healthy soda that I kind of tested out in Obi form. And certain aspects of it, I think we did right. And then certain aspects of it, I think we did wrong. And I also got a lot of strong data signals that, consumers are really ready for something like a healthy alternative to soda or a new type of soda. I mean, back when we were starting Obi, I won't say the person, but there was a major CEO who was talking to us and was like, literally, he was on our board of advisors and quit because he wanted us to turn Obi into a sparkling water. And he literally said that you have a gift from God with this product and you're going to throw it away by trying to make it a soda. Like and he just quit. He quit our advisory board.
Can you explain in the difference between like why it's considered soda and like why sparkling or like something a seltzer or whatever it might be is not soda?
It's so, I mean, the way it gets described to me when I go into areas like the Midwest and, where the soda's very alive and well, is that it's just the fullness of the flavor, and that's what I think people experience pretty generally when they have an Olipop versus a lot of the other brands or the sparkling waters or competing brands, is that they're thin. There's not a lot of boldness to the flavor. And like, I fucking love flavor. Like when I cook at home, probably add too much flavor, to be honest with you. But like, I want like a full. You don't want it to linger. You don't want it to be cloying. You don't want it to be like oversaturating. But I really love flavor, and I want to have that experience. I want the customers to have that experience. So you don't feel like you're drinking something that's like super diet or sparkling water because that's not the flavor experience.
What's interesting is like the research you were doing, like the thing that you realized you were looking at what was sort of missing or like lacking. And then, but I think that if someone was to look at like the soda industry or wanting to disrupt it, they would look at like the overconsumption of like sugar, for example, or something like that.
Yeah.
But so I'm just sort of curious, like how did that, the research of like, for example, like us lacking like certain fiber or whatever in our diet lead to you, and what was your approach to trying to like present like a healthier alternative to soda? Was it just the fact that like people were drinking too much like Coca-Cola or Pepsi or something like that, or was there more to it than that?
Well, so I've always thought of the product as having like a front end and a back end, right? So the front end is going to be brand, is going to be flavor. That's kind of like, I call that like the Trojan horse. So the idea is being like, if you want to convert people's behavior, don't show up and be like, you're so stupid for drinking soda. It's like, dude, fuck you. I grew up drinking soda. It's like Coke was there on my Christmas when I was 12 and like you weren't. So, like I feel like it's a pretty telling people they're stupid for their decisions is like not a great way to influence them. And so for me, it's like, hey, you like soda. Cool. It's because it's delicious. I get it. I liked soda for a long time too. Here's something that tastes just like soda, and you can enjoy it, so it makes the conversion easier. And then I almost thought a little bit separately in terms of kind of then what do I want to sneak into that formula? Like what do I want to have in that formula? Well, so, yes, like soda is crazy high in sugar. So why don't we build a low sugar one? Because that's going to be helpful. And then, fiber reacts almost completely antithetically to the way the sugar reacts in the body and in the liver. So you're actually you're taking the thing that is typically driving the most health disruption and you're using it to deliver the thing that is the actual antidote to the sugar that's causing all the issues.
The one thing I'm curious about, and I always think about this when I look at drinks like Olipop or like healthy alternatives, even like a kombucha. Is that one thing a traditional soda has done, let's call it well, for their business, is that they're addictive as shit, right? Because it has either you're addicted to the sugar or the caffeine or whatever it may be, right? Like I love water. Like I don't know if I'm addicted to it, but like I love it. I need it. Yeah. And everybody needs it. But I look at something like, now let's talk about Olipop, and I'm like, I love it. It tastes great. I want to have it with my meals.
Right.
But I don't think I'm addicted to it, or I can't get addicted to it, correct?
I mean, addiction is a hard thing to track, because I think that, for example, I think one of the reasons one of the big like cons that have been pulled on industrialized society is like create a low quality of life where people work constantly, they get treated like machines, and and they're not, especially in the United States, there's no social safety net and like very little social fabric. And then when that makes them miserable, give them something that they can use to kind of put a Band-Aid on that problem, right?
It's just a cycle.
Yeah. And then in this particular case, what that particular Band-Aid does is it actually deepens the groove, because now you're also making the health decline.
Right.
So when you talk about things like addiction, you can look at like what's the emotional upside, and what's that experience that they're having. But yeah, in soda definitely takes it to another level, right? Because the way, I mean, and I can tell me which rabbit holes you want me to go down.
No, it's fine, yeah. Like I remember my mom used to drink like 5 Cokes a day, and like it's like, well, because it's not the flavor,
But you start crashing, right? So you get your acid, your sugar, and your caffeine bumps you up, and then you crash. I can't quite say the product I was working on yet, but I was just working incredibly hard on a major soda type that will be coming out later this year. So I had to drink like
under OLIPOP, or
it'll be an OLIPOP. Yeah. So I had to drink like a liter of this shit a day almost for like a month straight, which is horrible. I think I gained like 5 pounds doing this, like horrific. But I was getting in that same cycle as I was drinking this, as I would have some, I'd actually feel better, and then I'd crash, and it did incentivize the continued consumption.
I think I have an idea of what this might be, but
exactly what people are going through when they're having that experience. Yeah. So between like, hey, I need something that's like tasty and hyper stimulating to make me feel better and like emotionally, and then I also need something that like jacks up my sugar and jacks up my caffeine. It's like, that combination will create addiction in quite a straightforward way.
So OLIPOP's born. I mean, how do you guys fund this thing? I mean, do you go the investment route?
We did, we did raise cap. We've actually raised quite a bit of capital to date. But one of the things that was nice is kind of how we handled ourselves through the Obi process. We did get a lot of respect with our investors. So we exited Obi, with a great set of suppliers and a great set of investors that were willing to jump into what we were doing next. Especially like my other piece as well is like, okay, if I'm going to have one beverage company and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to be in like similar-ish territory, like the next one's going to absolutely slap, right? Like it's got to go bullseye through.
You can't come back and flop.
Exactly.
You look like a loser.
Never good at that point. So, so I think like we got the concept so tight, and the flavor profile so tight that like even the investors we kind of knew already, they tried it and they saw what we were working on. They're like, oh, holy shit. Yeah, I get it. Like take my money.
You were doing the product still, the product development?
Second.
You were doing the product development?
I've always done 100% of our product development.
Yeah. And about how long did you say it took, like until launching the product?
So I started working on the OLIPOP formula in 2017, and then we actually launched late 2018.
Oh, not too long.
Simultaneously, so it was Obi had a 4-year.
Got it.
But that was like really complicated microbiology.
Yeah.
But all this stuff is iterative, right? Like all this stuff is compounded. Like going through something that difficult then makes the next thing, like you have a whole set of tools that you can apply to it. I even think I've become a better product. Like I look at the flavors I launched early in OLIPOP, and I look at what I'm launching now. I'm like, I've become a better product developer since I launched OLIPOP.
Yeah. I feel like with R&D, and I haven't really gone through the process to really know this, but I feel like it's easy to get in a place where you're sort of just spinning your wheels and you don't know like what maybe the end result or goal is. Did you have a clear idea of what you wanted to build, and like what were you leading with? Was it a certain amount of fiber to be able to also like taste well, and like what was like the thing that you were?
So I mean, the first thing I did look at as a kid, like the existing clinical literature that does exist around fiber and prebiotics, like what are the types and what's the levels, and so I wanted to actually have something where it's like if someone can only afford a can a day or only drinks a can a day, we'll just still provide them with a benefit. And actually now we have clinical trials done with Purdue and Baylor College of Medicine, which sends some strong signals that the answer is like absolutely still provides a material benefit, but that's by design. So there was some kind of like non-negotiables there for me because I just didn't want to have like a product where you have to drink like 8 to get the benefit out of it.
Right.
And the fiber is actually useful. It does provide a certain amount of substance to the formula. Get a little bit of that soda syrupiness, but it's not coming from real syrup. It's coming from this kind of hologram, if you will, that you're building out of like all these different, your acid profile and your sweetness profile and your fibers and all your kind of different ingredients.
So what happens? Like one day you just like taste the formula and you're like, all right, it's ready. Or like, did you
Kind
feel
of,
like
yeah.
that? Or-
Yeah, no, that is how I work. It's just like, I've become much more efficient. So my style has changed a little bit. I've gotten to the point where I'll think of a formula, and then some things I can't do this with, like this one particular drink I just was working on, this flavor I was working on, like I couldn't approach it this way because it's just so complex. But for a lot of them, I'll actually spend a lot of time thinking about the flavor architecture. So this is, again, one of the ways my brain works. This is really helpful for me. Is I can really conceptualize stuff, and I can like almost taste it. And now I know, like, here's what all the different acids do, and here's what all the blah blahs do. So I can sit there in my mind, work through the architecture, and then I try to get to the point where by the time I'm writing a formula down on my notebook, that I'm trying to be within like shooting distance of where it actually needs to end out. And I've been like pretty good at that to this, then you start iterating, right? Because it's always that last 20 to 30% where it's like, okay, this one flavor is just a little off, or these aren't quite working together. I mean, this is, having a background in music production is actually really helpful for formulating, because when you're working on like a song, you're like, okay, here's my kick drum, here's my bass line, here's my mids, here's my blah, blah, blahs. And all of those things sit in a stereo field. Yeah. And some are mono and some are stereo and all this kind of stuff. So when I taste products, I think of it in terms of
you taste in mono and stereo.
Yeah, I taste like, I'm like, what color is this? Yeah. Where does it sit in my mouth? And I build effectively a stereo field out of what I'm consuming, and then I can literally be like, the bass notes are off, or these notes are off, and I can work towards that until this thing actually makes sense. Now, the other trick I use is as I'm working through it, if I drink it and I put it down, and then without thinking about it, within 20 seconds, I'm picking it back up because I want to have more, and not because I'm like obsessed with figuring out what's wrong with it, but because I actually want to drink it. I'm like, all right, I'm pretty close now.
Will there be like a 2-liter OLIPOP one day, just to kind of like...
Never say never. We are putting out 6 packs and 8 4-packs, and like we're putting out different pack sizes in terms of, I mean, we're never going to go into the plastic bottle just because it's shit for the environment. You do see kombuchas doing those gigantic glass things. I don't know if glass... It's expensive, and it's also heavy. Glass is really heavy to ship around. So when you try to look at the CO2 impacts of all that, and it can break, and like it's a lot, So the issue is really just going to be around the form factor, but I could see a larger form factor in our future.
Right, because I'm just thinking in terms of scale, like I brought up parties before. You could definitely have the cans at a party. Right. But I feel like, growing up, you have your pizza parties and your burgers, barbecues, this and that, whatever. Yeah. And it's always that 2-liter fucking Coke, Sprite, Dr. Pepper, It's like right there.
How come I haven't been to any of your pizza parties? What is it?
You didn't eat pizza back then. I don't know.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, this is why I'm always like, don't get me started on this diatribe, but this is why there needs to be way more fucking research because why is there not a fucking algae-based shrink wrap yet? I'm just why are there not better? Yeah. There are some plant-based plastics that can hold liquids, but they can't hold carbonation.
And I'm sure whoever invents that is going to become a trillionaire.
Fucking so rich.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's and I'm sure I'm hoping somebody's working on it, because I do see a day that you will replace all plastic. Somebody's definitely doing that.
Again, this gets back to this false, well, do we fix the environment or do we not fix the environment?
Paper straws are not the answer, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, no. Well, we do. I mean, it's a crazy number. Apparently, we do use 500 million fucking straws every day in the United States, which is unfathomable. But you're right. I mean, the big issue is the oil companies and shit need to get the shit together. But every time that we run a pallet and we have to cover with plastic wrap, I'm like, this is just it kills me. Right. Why don't we have this?
I'm not sure if Obi ever reached the scale that you guys are at with OLIPOP.
For sure not.
Yeah, no. So what is something maybe at this stage that you've learned or seen that maybe you didn't know about the industry, or of building a beverage brand like OLIPOP that you can share?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably not the answer you're looking for, but I do find that things, it's kind of, when you're a lot smaller, there's upsides and there's downsides. The downside is that if you're small and you show something of promise, lots of people are going to try to parasite off of you and get their piece, right? And you're in a pretty like fragile position, and so you always have to be fucking buffering against that and making really terrible choices around where things go. We did have to do less of that with Olipop because of the kind of reputation that we had established. But the thing that's interesting to me is we've gotten bigger is really on like the human front, because especially on the investor side, early on, you basically deal with investors. It's like they're either fucking assholes and they don't give a shit, or they actually will take the time to hear you out. And then you it's easier to figure out like, who do I want to work with and who do I not want to work with? And then you get to it. We're currently the fastest growing functional refrigerated beverage in the country. And then we built I'm almost even more excited about is that what we built has turned into a new category. So we're called functional soda. There's a handful of brands in the category. It's the fastest growing beverage category in the country.
Wow. I can imagine that's what happened with kombucha a little bit, right? At some point.
Similar, but like we're going to blow past kombucha really quickly. I think as a category. I mean, it's like 440% growth over the last 52 weeks. We're at 250% growth of the last 52 weeks. I mean, 2020 we grew by 1100%.
Wow.
And then 2021 we grew by what's the number? Like 540%.
What do you think that is a result of? Like, what is it? Like, is it just a natural progression of like human consumption that we get there? Like, was there something that obviously you guys introducing a great product is a big piece of that? But what, like, is there anything else you could point to as to why?
Well, I do think a lot of the innovation that happens, especially in food and beverage, does happen for the kind of progressive coastal communities, And so then it's like, okay, it's another weird kale juice with ashwagandha and reishi mushroom in it. And I don't know, someone shopping at a fucking Kroger in Ohio is going to be like, what the fuck is this for $8?
Yeah.
I mean, because, an interesting experience that I had was a couple years ago at this point, we were still in mostly natural channel and coastal, but myself and some of the people from the company went to go do a tabletop show for 7-Eleven in like Dallas. And I was like, okay, finally, we're going to get our asses handed to us. I'm sampling these like corporate 7-Eleven employees in Dallas, fucking Texas. But I'm going to get my ass handed to me. And I got less pushback from that group, than I got from people I'd sample at Whole Foods in California. And I would be like, what's going on? And I'd try to ask them about it. And the thing I was kind of talking about earlier, where they're like, yeah, it actually is full flavored. It actually tastes good. So, and what they're like, I tried to switch from soda to sparkling water, and it all just tastes like salt water, which is the thing I heard over and over again for some reason at that show. But yeah, I think this like really what I'm trying to do with Olipop is like, it's innovation for the rest of us. It's innovation for everybody. It's like we do, kombucha is $1 billion market. That's cool. Like I mentioned before, soda's 40+ billion.
Yeah.
And these are US numbers. So like the scale of penetration and interest is just like on such a whole different playing field.
You mentioned at one point, I don't know if you remember, but it was about the fact that that Olipop is just bigger than what currently we're seeing, right? Like, what is that goal? Or are you able to share what that ultimate goal is?
Yeah, I mean, so for my big thing, there's a handful of pieces here. Firstly, I do like the concept of actually having like an empathetic formula that says, okay, cool, like Coke, Pepsi, Keurig Dr. Pepper, not Keurig so much, but Dr. Pepper, like those brands have been inside of the United States for like 125+ years, right? They're like so foundational to our country. And so having a little empathy for the fact that everybody grew up drinking it. I mean, Coke's whole premise is to be in arm's reach at all times for 99 cents or less a can, right? Mm-hmm. So that shit has worked for a really long time. And I like this idea of like, let's move more of our actual innovation into that kind of playing field. The other thing that's huge is, like having now been a part of the quote health and wellness kind of products sector for 16 years, and even having been guilty of this myself when I was younger and more naive or whatever the fuck it was. But like a lot of health claims get made. Like, for example, I was out hawking kombucha and being like, it does this and it does this. And now I'm older and I look at the data and I'm like, there's only been one randomized human clinical trial in kombucha and the results were inconclusive. There's no solid data backing this category up. And health and wellness, like, is a bucket. Yeah. So if you include food, beverage, and supplements, in 2021, it was a $300 billion industry in the United States. It's massive. And so many of the products that are in that category make all kinds of claims. And they're either just totally full of shit, or they have just no idea if it's doing what. I mean, I won't get into it. One of our competitors barely even has a prebiotic even in their product. Or, they released like a new line that now has like some, but for the longest time, they literally didn't have prebiotics. Called themselves a prebiotic soda, said that the product cleared your skin, was good for your immune system, was good for, like, in the middle of COVID. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me right now? But that's just normal. It's normal because of loose regulation and an uneducated population to make a bunch of claims.
Right.
So this is why we did research with Purdue and Baylor, which is why we're doing more research, because I actually would like to make a shift, and where if people are paying a premium for a product, I think is going to be helpful for them, that there's actually some data on the product, not just on the ingredient in general, that kind of helps to validate that. But simultaneously, like, that's got to be strategically advantageous for the business, because you can go around making the moral argument all day, but the business community is going to be the business community unless they see how that is good for the business itself. So being astronomically successful, holding down actual empirical data, creating an empathetic, well-formulated product. And then there are some ways, which can't quite get into yet, but there's some ways that that's going to play out, or that I'm looking to have them play out, that could be very disruptive to a couple different industries.
And we talk about the industry in general, just even CPG or just like beverages and products, and how much of a noisy space it is. And it sounds like a lot of brands, obviously try to get to a certain point where they can exit, whether it's like some sort of acquisition or something. And it's usually the big guys, right? Like the Coca-Colas and the Pepsis and the behemoths that you mentioned. Do you think that there's still room or like the opportunity for a brand, say it's Olipop, say it's another CPG company, to get to that level, to be like a multi-brand, international conglomerate of like, it's
a mixed answer. In Olipop's case, there is potentially a route to it. If some stuff that I want to pull off, I am able to pull off, which opens up the headroom on the available market share. And at that point in time, you can start looking at something like an IPO. Yeah. So, because basically we have a bunch of investors and they need the liquidity of it.
Right.
So it's either going to be an IPO or it's going to be a strategic acquisition. One of those two things.
Yep.
If you, in theory, if you have an IPO, then the public market is going to beat you up a lot. And so like, it's going to make it intrinsically, first of all, I don't really want to manage a public company. I mean, we'll see what happens if we get there. But then like, secondly, because of market forces, it can be a little harder to be innovative and kind of go your own way. And when you exit into a strategic, that's like that, but even more so the case. Depending on how Olipop goes, I think there's a real world where I do this, and then I do my next business, and then I have the wealth that I don't need investment, especially while the company is where the equity that you have to give away is the most expensive. And I think under those conditions, you could actually build something that stayed private. But it would have to be an exceptionally efficient business, because, as a beverage, like between KDP, Coke, and Dr. Pepper, they own 90% of the beverage industry in the United States. And they have a bunch of snacks. So you're going to have to find a way to navigate around that.
Right. So for those that haven't tried it, I'm sure after listening to this interview, they will. I know, they could obviously find it in several stores. I'm not sure which ones. But I was also thinking
research.
Research it. Yeah, figure it out. If you really want to drink it, figure it out.
No, I mean, you can go to our website for sure. You can go to our website. Our website too. Yeah, it's drinkolipop.com, and we do have a store locator.
Perfect. Yeah. There you go. I was also going to ask, like, the one thing that I think Coke and Pepsi and all those have done really well is that any restaurant you go to, obviously, they have that B2B strategy.
Yeah.
When does that come into Olipop, or does it at all?
It does, yeah. So we just opened up a distributor that will give us massive capacity to influence the food service, fast casual.
Nice.
And we do have a director of food service. So we only just signed that deal like within the last 2 weeks.
Awesome.
But it gives us a lot of headroom to start opening that.
Because I feel like that's a great place for customers to like learn about
100%.
your product.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a little typical because it's not like you can have like point of sale stuff.
Right.
So they have to like see it on a menu or see it in a case and be curious.
Or like on the like.
Reminds me of the La Colombe story we had. Yeah. We had the founder of La Colombe Coffee.
Yeah.
And like I think it was like some situation where like they had to put that it was like La Colombe on the menu.
Well, he paid they paid him to put his
like the restaurant going into like restaurants. Yeah.
I'll take that deal.
Yeah. Pretty interesting deal.
That's not the deal that they offered him. Yeah. That's the deal he ended up negotiating. Was that they would pay him like a licensing agreement or like some licensing fee to have his coffee that they were buying on the menu. I don't know if he could get that deal. I don't know how true that deal was. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Yeah. But I mean, it's worth a first
For sure, I wouldn't go on a menu and just be like, what would you put? Like Coke alternative or soda
no,
alternative.
yeah,
You'd
yeah.
have to put the brand name in it.
You got to put the brand name,
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah.
That's awesome.
Well, I mean, this has been such an incredible, insightful conversation. I'm looking at the time and I'm like, God, I wish we could sit here more and
I'm about to
just
start a
chat.
life sciences company.
I mean, you inspired us for sure. But can't thank you enough for coming here and hanging out with us, and just sharing and being so open with your story,
Yeah,
and just being super open about sharing it all, and hope everything goes as planned as you imagine it to be with the company, and we're excited to kind of follow on that journey. And man, it's been a pleasure.
Thank both of you so much for having me.